Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the January 20th City Council Workshop meeting. Before we jump into setting the agenda, I have a couple housekeeping items I just wanted to go through real quickly. We have two council members that will be joining us. They're running a little bit late. We do, however, have quorum, so we can move forward. It looks like the microphone, so we are making adjustments to our audio. We're continuing to make those adjustments, so please bear with us. But if anyone comes up and speaks at the podium, please make sure to get the microphone close so that everyone can hear you, and all those watching from home are able to hear you as well. And if you kind of wander away during presentations or anything, please make sure that you take the microphone with you. All right, with that said, I believe there's going to be two amendments to the agenda, two agenda items, starting with B3. The name and the title will not be changing, but the budget amendment has been added in. And then closed session C1 will actually be adding another reason that we're going into closed session, so that will be amended to say that City Council will be meeting in closed session under NC General Statute 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreements on the tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations, or to discuss matters related to military installation, closure, or realignment, and also now...
Jason's here, sorry.
Oh, that's right. And also now, NC Gen Stat 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between an attorney and the public body. So I will entertain motions to amend the agenda and then to set the agenda. So I get a motion to amend.
I just do it in one fell swoop and make a motion to set the agenda as amended?
I will entertain a motion to set the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
Mark, seconded by Alex. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the agenda is set. So that will take us to agenda item B1, but before we get into that, I want to do a recognition real quick. If anyone has been following along with our social media, you may know that Belmont recently received a sizable grant, and we are very proud and excited about that grant, and everyone that spent time, that put forth their time in order to make sure that grant was received by Belmont. So I'd like to read a little opening remark here. As we mentioned in the last City Council meeting, we are proud and honored to share that our city has been awarded a $25 million through the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets and Roads for All program. This is one of the most competitive transportation safety grants in the country, and this award represents years of planning, collaboration, and a shared commitment to saving lives on the city streets. This funding will allow us to make transformative and deeply necessary safety improvements in critical locations across the community, and it firmly positions our city as a leader in Vision Zero and proactive safety planning. Council would like to take this opportunity to recognize individuals and organizations who played a role in this monumentous accomplishment. First, we'd like to recognize those that worked directly with the grant application. I want to begin by recognizing Reagan Murphy. So Reagan, if you would stand up and kind of wave for everybody here. Senior Transportation Planner and Vision Zero lead, who led the entire grant development effort. She wrote the grant narrative, developed the budget and the graphics, managed our consulting team, delivered presentations, secured funding support for City Council and NCDOT, and obtained 15 letters of support for our partner agencies. This level of leadership, organization, and persistence is exactly what it takes to win at the federal level, and we're deeply grateful for her dedication. I would also like to recognize Captain Aaron Black. Captain Black, are you here? No. All right. Police captain and Vision Zero lead, who helped identify, refine, and finalize the list of projects and programs included in the grant. His insight was essential in fleshing out the grant request details and in presenting the funding request to City Council and community partners, ensuring that enforcement, education, and community relations were thoughtfully integrated into the proposal. Thank you as well to our consulting team, GFT Inc., whose technical expertise played a critical role in this success. Their preliminary engineering design and detailed cost estimates allowed the city to confidently capitalize on this funding opportunity, ensuring our request was both ambitious and credible. Here with us tonight from the GFT team are Michael Holder, Baohong Wan, Rick Tipton, Angel Prigden, and Joe Conrad, all of who worked directly with our staff on the grant application. We'd also like to recognize the other staff across the city who contributed to the success of this application. Our thanks go out to Jared Piles, Finance Director. Jared, are you here? All right, there he is in the back there. Finance Director, for working with the grant team to develop an innovative approach to our non-federal match and ensuring the grant budget was strong and sustainable. I'd also like to recognize our Zero Vision Task Force, who is made up of an internal staff from planning, police, public works, and fire. So is anyone here from the group? You can go ahead and stand up for that. Thank you all for that. This group helped vet and refine the final project packages, ensuring the proposal reflected both data-driven priorities and on-the-ground realities. Thank you as well to our planning director Tiffany Farrow. There's Tiffany there. And the rest of the planning department for supporting ongoing departmental work during this intense grant development period so that the application could remain a top priority. Finally, we want to thank our partners who contributed their time and talent towards the application. Our Vision Zero Advisory Board, made up of valued partners and advocates from across our community, county, and region, played a vital role in helping develop the Vision Zero Action Plan, which made us eligible for this grant in the first place. They also gave guidance to our staff to help identify the initiatives that ultimately form the foundation of our application. Thank you to Trip Blair, Erica Bobo, Tammy Cato, Juan Garcia, Ashton Lamb, Laverne Partlow, Taylor Scott, and Autumn Walden for your service on the advisory board and your contributions to the community. Is the advisory board here? All right, thank you. I would also like to give special recognition to Taylor Scott, a member of both our advisory board and the city's Transportation Advisory Committee, who went above and beyond. Taylor helped coordinate letters of support, assisted with messaging, and advocated for our application with federal legislators. That kind of advocacy and partnership makes a difference at the national level. Thank you, Taylor. This award is a powerful reminder that we can accomplish when staff, partners, and elected officials work together toward a shared goal. On behalf of City Council and our entire community, thank you to everyone involved in this effort. Your work will save lives, strengthen our city, and leave a lasting legacy of safer streets for generations to come. So thank you everyone that was involved in that. And if you're here, please stay around. We're going to get into that a little more, and I believe there are some gifts and awards up here that we would like to present a little later on as we get into it. So with that said, that will take us to agenda item B1, Safe Streets for All, the SS4A grant overview. I think we have Reagan here to present for the city.
That's right. Thank you very much, Mayor Jordan and Council. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. And yes, as Mayor Jordan mentioned, before we dive into all the details, wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who made the grant application possible, helped us make it as competitive as it was, and helped maintain, city operations while we were working on that grant effort, but also helped pour into what we ultimately submitted to USDOT. So I want to take this moment, as Mayor Jordan mentioned, to ask our partners and supporters to come on up if you were named earlier as one of the partner organizations or individuals who helped us out, and we'll do the gifts now before we keep going with the details.
photo opportunity or anything? Wanna do that? Yeah, I think that'd be good. Yeah. Council, y'all want to stand up and take a picture with them? I think it's the entire room. Hey, what's going on, man? You doing all right? Good to see you, man. Good.
All right. Thank y'all so much for that recognition and indulging that moment of celebration. I know that oftentimes, you know, the work keeps going and keeps rolling, and I think it's so special and so important to take a pause when accomplishments like this happen and celebrate the magnitude and the excitement so that we can help keep the momentum going. So thank you all for that. And on that same note, I want to give an immense shout out to this council as well for your work in supporting Vision Zero and supporting staff as we've brought new and exciting and sometimes crazy ideas before you, giving us that support, advocating on our behalf and on behalf of the Vision Zero program, and continuing to invest both your time and your support, and also some serious actual investment in this program as well. We really couldn't have done it without you, and I want to recognize your leadership in this as well. So if we could do a quick round of applause for council as well. Thank you all so much. All right, so now the details that we've all been waiting for. I want to start really quick with a recap of our Vision Zero program and why this matters to Belmont. So as we're all aware, but I like to remind folks, Belmont has actually a higher rate of fatal and severe traffic crashes per capita than many of our peer communities in the region, and in fact, all of our peer communities in the greater Charlotte region that have Vision Zero programs. We actually have the highest per capita rate of fatal and severe crashes. So Vision Zero is not just a feel-good program here. It really does make a difference. And as Mayor Jordan mentioned, it is about saving lives on our streets. Our data about our traffic crashes also shows that our pedestrians in Belmont are disproportionately impacted by traffic crashes. So they have a higher rate or a higher chance than our drivers of being impacted by severe injuries or fatalities if they're involved in a crash. So little bit of a sombering reminder that this work is not just exciting stuff and exciting opportunities for funding, but it really is critical and emotionally driven too, right? Because as we want to invest in a safer community, there's real lives at stake and real implications for doing that. So our adopted vision statement, which Council adopted as part of our Vision Zero plan in 2024, as a community, it's our responsibility to eliminate traffic deaths for all who share Belmont streets by 2030. That's an ambitious goal, and how do we work toward that? Well, the key foundations of Vision Zero Belmont are our high injury network corridors and intersections. So in our Vision Zero plan, we have 15 corridors and 15 intersections. Those are the intersections and the corridors with the most severe crashes and the highest rates of severe and fatal crashes across our community. So that's where we focus our Vision Zero solutions. And when we look at implementing solutions for Vision Zero. These are the locations specifically that we focus in on to have the highest impact on traffic safety. We also have 3 guiding emphasis areas that we've committed to. And again, those emphasis areas are designed to target the most frequent causes of our fatal and severe crashes based on our last 5 to 6 years of crash data. So those are protecting vulnerable road users and promoting walkability, cultivating driver alertness and accountability, and reducing intersection conflicts. And how do we do that? What's the nuts and bolts of how we accomplish those things and address those emphasis areas? We kind of have 3 ways we attack that goal of eliminating fatal crashes by 2030. We have, of course, your capital improvements, your projects that you probably immediately think of when you think about traffic safety. We also have our programs and our outreach and engagement events like our Walk to School Day events, our walk audits that some of you have participated in. And then we also have policies that help bolster that and kind of from the ground up, from the planning level, help us start with safer streets, like our enforcement, our land development code and code of ordinances, and like our traffic calming policy. So with that kind of background out of the way, I want to dive into what we've all been dying to talk more about, which is the grant itself from Safe Streets for All. So if you remember, if you're familiar at all with the grant, Safe Streets for All offers 2 pots of funding. One of those is planning and demonstration, and that's for communities that need extra assistance to develop a Vision Zero action plan. Want to give council a kudos and all of our Vision Zero advisory board, our task force members, and all the staff who worked on our action plan, because as a reminder, we were able to develop that in-house during 2024. We took about a year to do that, and that unlocked the second pot of funding for us. So that allowed us to kind of step over that first pot and become eligible for implementation funding. And that second pot of money is really intended to support those 3 buckets I just talked about: projects, policies, and programs to support traffic safety and address traffic safety issues at the root in communities. And as we know, there is a 20% local match requirement. You can earn up to 80% federal funding through the grant application for the total amount. So we were awarded $25 million. That's our grant total. And of that, the federal share is $20 million, and then the local or non-federal share is $5 million. Quick, simple math for you. So how do we come up with that local match? There are 2 broad buckets that USDOT allows for providing local match. One of those is in-kind contributions, and that covers a range of different things, from staff salaries to, for time dedicated to Vision Zero activities, to time dedicated to grant administration. You saw many of our valued volunteers a moment ago stand up for their recognition. USDOT also allows us to count the value of their volunteer time. So we're able to kind of value, what their contributions are to things like advisory board meetings, some of the events that we put on like Walk to School Day, and so on. It also allows you to count supplies, materials, software, equipment, operational needs that help us keep the lights on for Vision Zero, and for the portion of the city that, funnels into Vision Zero. And then the value of capital improvements or other investments that support our implementation efforts. And I want to note that those in-kind capital improvements can be made by the city, or they can be made by our partners, for example, some of our development partners. So that'll come up in a couple minutes, because we were able to kind of creatively leverage some approved development investment and capital improvements to unlock some more federal dollars for us. And then, of course, whatever can't be comprised of in-kind contributions is made up of cash contributions. Once again, can be from the city, but can also be from some of our partners. So I'm really happy to share that we were able to get North Carolina Department of Transportation, their traffic safety unit, to commit $50,000 in local match share. Hopefully we can advocate maybe for a little bit more between now and when the grant agreement is finalized, but they were willing to kind of start out at $50,000 and see if we were approved. So we're excited to continue those conversations. And then, of course, for our approach, as I mentioned, we're kind of leveraging a combination of those options. We're trying to stay creative, leverage as many of our existing costs as we can, funds that have been contributed or improvements that have been committed to by our development partners, so that we can leverage existing improvements and existing funds, minimize the amount of match that has to come out of the general fund balance or go through the CIP process, to really make this $20 million work for us as best we can. So really excited about that. And for the total award amount, I know a lot of folks have been asking me, okay, how is it going to be spent? How are we spending the $25 million? Which is a valid question. So we came to council in May 2025. Originally, we asked for up to $22 million in our proposal for USDOT. And again, I want to shout out council, and I believe it was Councilman Zook specifically who said, hey, if we're going to go for this, why don't we go for the whole thing? And ask for $25 million. And so we were able to look back at the projects, flesh out our estimates a little further, and add some elements to get us up to that $25 million. So we're really excited about that. We're spending that money in 3 primary ways, and this is a really high-level overview, but one of those is grant administration. So obviously it takes a lot of time and effort to administer a $25 million federal grant. So we've allocated just under $400,000 to either a permanent staff position or a consultant-based grant management contract to have a consultant support us over that 5-year period with grant administration and reporting. We have about almost $800,000 allocated to our programs and policies. That will go towards things like reporting, our staff time, our programs and events, our software subscriptions to do our analyses, show the value of the improvements that we make, and other types of programming. And then capital projects are the bulk of that $25 million. So those are going to be improvements that we will see on our city streets within the 5-year term of the grant. And we have separated those into 4 primary project buckets, which I'll get into a little further in just a minute. And then we do have kind of a buffer at the bottom that we've listed out for low-cost, quick-build safety improvements elsewhere on our high injury network, but could potentially be lumped into other projects or kind of adjusted as needed. But we do have that small buffer there at the end. Before we get into the capital improvements, I want to talk a bit about the programs and the policies that this grant will help fund, specifically because those capital improvements are great and they're important, and that's what people are going to see and use every day as they travel our streets. But the programs and the policies and the software and everything else that kind of goes in behind the scenes to help readjust attitudes around traffic safety in our community, educate folks on how to use the system in a safer way, and really underlie how we approach using our streets. That's where the real changes are going to take place, and where those capital improvements are going to make the most difference, is where we advocate for those behavior changes that allow us to travel more safely and think of others as we navigate our community. So a couple highlights on the programming side. We're really excited to have incorporated funding for a software subscription to Urban SDK in our proposal, which is a GIS-based software for traffic analysis, essentially. It takes GPS data from vehicles that are attached to GPS systems, as well as cell phone data that pings GPS radar, and helps us analyze traffic speeds, volumes at hourly and daily levels, how folks are routing, so how folks are getting from point A to point B in the trip distribution, delays and congestion metrics, travel time, and it also, importantly, allows us to look at near misses and high-risk locations for collisions. That data for most of those metrics gets refreshed daily. So not only will this be really helpful and important for Vision Zero as we implement some of our capital improvements and then look to say, okay, this reduced, potential collision by X amount, it reduced speeds by X amount. We'll also be able to use this beyond just for Vision Zero. And I believe Chief Falls will join me up here in just a moment to speak to how the police department anticipates they'll be able to use that software. I know in planning, we are often, before you talking about traffic impact analyses, usually which have data that have been collected a year, 2 years ago. And so this will help us, at least in the planning department, kind of ground truth that data and say, okay, you know what, 2 years ago when this traffic data was collected, these were the volumes. This is the growth that we anticipated in that study, but actually we've seen higher growth. And so here's what that looks like now. So we'll be able to have more data-driven conversations about the projects that come before you. Chief, do you want to speak to the police side?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager.
City Attorney.
City Attorney, Parks, sorry, didn't mean to leave you out there, Parks. Thanks, Jim. I just want to talk to you about some of the benefits of using the Urban SDK software for the Belmont Police Department. The Urban SD software provides the Belmont Police Department with a modern, data-driven platform to improve traffic safety, optimize enforcement, and respond more efficiently to community concerns. It's a proactive way of utilizing a software for traffic safety enforcement. Like Reagan said, it's real-time historical speed, volume, and collision risk analysis allows officers to identify problem areas before they escalate. You know, I've spoke to you guys for upwards of 3 years about the stealth stats that we do, and that stuff usually takes a week. And, you know, we only have a couple of those to put out on some of our streets and stuff. So when we have multiple complaints by citizens in some of our neighborhoods, it takes us a longer period of time than what this SDK software, because it's in real time, would be able to provide for us. And along with that, it will free up a lot of our allocation of resources from different units and officers to allow us to do other things besides do all the things that comes with the stealth stat studies and all of that. So it's it really helps us not only prioritize where we need to be at and I guess where we need to actually work on the traffic complaints, but it actually backs it up with the data. So the data-driven will allow us to make decisions where our staffing levels will be more efficient and directed where they're most needed. Automated reporting and documentation, it actually generates maps, charts, and speed studies and reports quickly for internal planning grants or council presentations. Reduce administrative burden on our command staff, which I'm 100% in agreement of. It'll enhance cross-department collaboration. You know, as we've been involved in Vision Zero and the task force and advisory committees, you know, we have collaborated across the board, but this will be something where it'll provide us a source of traffic and safety data that can be used by the police department, public works, the planning and zoning, and emergency management when we have situations that happen, and that might be like the storm that's possibly potentially coming the weekend. Improve citywide coordination in our safety initiatives. And in summary, it'll support the Belmont Police Department by offering accurate traffic data, and it would be rapid and complaint validations. You know, we've had a lot of times we have our traffic calming measures were not able to be implemented because of not actually having issues where we thought we had issues or public complaints, and this will eliminate a lot of that stuff, and we'll have the data and the facts up front versus taking a longer period of time where citizens might get frustrated because they're not getting an answer, you know, quickly in a response. And in that, with all of what I just said, that'll help with our community trust, and that's, you know, what the main objective is, to make sure that the community trusts us to where they'll call us and tell us about all the situations that they're having in their community. Also, the SDK software would be a benefit to the police department by allowing us to concentrate on areas where we're having issues in our enforcement actions. Instead of utilizing a lot of the time and allocation of resources to put all of the instruments out and want to pick them up, download the software to get the results of that, we can concentrate on our compliance, and also we can concentrate on like the programs that we do, the initiatives that we do with our Governor's Highway Safety initiatives that go right in line with our Vision Zero initiatives and our goals. And with that, maybe we can save lives through allowing us to serve the public better with the software that we're looking at getting. I think that's about it. Covered everything in my notes, sorry.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
so do you see this SDK software replacing the StealthStat software completely, or is there a reason to keep that?
I've had talks with my administration about that, in particular Aaron Black. I do believe it will, I don't say ultimately that it will replace it, because I like to have a backup to a backup to a backup. So I think, with anything, the software's great, but if something happens, we can always utilize the StealthStat, because it's not something that we have a monthly subscription or annual subscription for. We have the data. As long as we keep it updated, I think we can utilize the StealthStat as a backup to this to ensure that we're still providing a good service to the community. If the software for some reason goes down, you have updates and that sort of thing along the way. I think it'd be beneficial to keep that. But yes, in a sense, it would be less focused on the StealthStat and more focused on this because of the real-time data and the benefits of that, and allowing us to provide the data-driven enforcement actions and educational stuff that we'd be doing in the community. It will tell us right away when we're having an issue or whether we're not having an issue, to where we can focus our attention on another area, because with growth, we've seen a lot of growth over the years, and it's not going to stop. So with that, there are multiple places. We have like 12 problem streets where we focus our attention mainly with traffic, so to speak. But it will allow us to focus our attention in many different areas, because we'll have the data to be able to focus on our attention on that area based on the facts and the data, versus having to wait for that data for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and not having the ability to actually target these areas because we're not sure if there's an issue or not. This gives us in real time what the issue, if it's an issue or isn't, so allows us to focus in other places.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I know we did a bit more of a deep dive on the Urban SDK software. Wanted to kind of preview that for y'all, because that is a subscription that will be kind of coming forward as part of the proposed FY27 budget. So wanted to kind of get that on y'all's radar sooner. And also, of course, it's something we're really excited about.
How does it work exactly?
Like, how does the data kind of
how would
plug
it
in?
replace StealthStat?
So, like Chief said, it's not a direct replacement, and I wouldn't say it's exactly apples to apples, but it does provide a lot of similar metrics. So the way that the software works is when you have a vehicle that has like GPS in the navigation system, or it's pinging GPS satellites, or even if you're using your Apple Maps or your Google Maps or Waze, and it's pinging GPS satellites as you're moving in your vehicle, a lot of that data is getting rolled up into platforms like this. Urban SDK is not the only one, but Urban SDK is the best we've found. There are some competitors, but this one is more specifically focused on traffic safety metrics. But yeah, basically what it does is it aggregates that data up, so then I can go into the software, let's say, and look at, okay, I want to see traffic on Wilkinson Boulevard between Park Street and Catawba from 7 to 9 a.m. and then 6 to 8 p.m. on a given date. Compare that to the same date a year prior to see, the growth in traffic volumes, and it'll show me. It won't give you like person by person level data. It's all aggregated back up to protect privacy, but it'll allow you to analyze, okay, what were the average speeds? What was the highest speed? What were the what was the range of speeds between the average and the 95th percentile speed on that corridor? What were the volumes? So how many vehicles were traveling? How many vehicle miles traveled did we have in our community? So how many miles are actually being put on our streets versus what we might expect? So it's a range of really neat metrics that we can analyze kind of at a moment's notice. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. go
Sorry.
ahead.
So, one of the topics that comes up at a lot of our TAC meetings is signal timing
Yes.
in Belmont.
Yeah.
Can this software capture signal timing? Is it integrated with the traffic flows at particular times? Because that's when we're bringing that up to DOT, now we can have supporting data.
Some data to actually show
Right.
the issues. Yeah, I think by proxy it can help us talk about signalization, because it will give us metrics around congestion. So we'll be able to say, okay, vehicles were sitting at this light for up to X amount of time. We can kind of estimate that and project it out based on, you know, some of the current modeling software that we have access to through our consultants, but this will allow us to say, hey, it's on South Point Road at the middle school and the high school, this is how long folks are sitting waiting to get from point A to point B through that corridor.
Great.
Is this just an internal tool, or is there an external facing component to it?
This one would be an internal tool, so it's like a seat-based software license, so we would get 3 seats. Yep, so we would have 3 staff members designated to be able to go into the software, pull reports. But as Chief mentioned, there are some automated reporting functions that can generate maps, graphics, and those we could pull out and share, you know, to some extent or to a great extent publicly. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, since this is a subscription, what is like the annual ongoing cost?
Yeah, so the annual cost for this, we just got our quote updated, I think late last week. And so it's, I believe, just over $33,000 a year for the 3. It's 33 per year, I think, over 3 years. So the estimate that we've built into our Safe Streets for All budgeting is that this would be a 5-year cost of $175,000. And that's based on the Urban SDK allows us to enter a 3-year software agreement, so we would look to do that starting in FY27, and that would lock us in until June 2030. Yeah, over 3 years, and then we would sign another 3-year agreement, which would lock us into the same annual price. They, in their contract, bake in an expected increase of 7%, so that's why it's kind of jumping up in those last 2 years.
And then, I mean, might be a silly question, but I guess as soon as we sign the agreement, we get the historical data, because you said you can do trend. So I guess the data already exists, we just get access to that. We
Right.
don't have to wait a year to do that?
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool,
Yeah.
cool.
So as soon as we enter that agreement, we can start pulling retroactive reports as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
of course.
this relatively new for municipalities? Do you know of any that are currently using it, or will we be some of the first?
Chief might be able to speak better to that, and I know Captain Black has done a lot of this research. I believe that Gaston County's police department is using it. There are a handful of other municipalities, and like I mentioned, there are some other kind of peer software programs that give you slightly different metrics. Like you may have heard of Streetlight before. That one is one that I've used before in past roles that has been around for probably about 10 years now. Urban SDK, I think, is a little newer on the scene and, like I said, is a little more focused on traffic safety. So that's our interest there.
I think you kind of answered the question.
Okay, cool.
Just briefly, I'd like to say, when we did our webinar with the group from SDK, we picked the intersection Armstrong Ford Road by Del Webb, where everyone's really wanting the red light to be in place immediately. We picked that intersection and looked at the traffic data for a different period of time, and it was very impressive, the results that it was able to do. And you can put in it's the search bar, is the filter for it is just phenomenal, and you can. It was amazing for me to be able to pull up how many cars were going this fast at this period of time or during this period of time. We could just, it was literally just plug and play, and it was very impressive with just looking at that intersection and being able to tell this day of the week, the cars were speeding more at this time, and it was very impressive. There are other agencies utilizing the software. They actually told us some of the ones that were utilizing it. The county police is using it, but there are some other agencies across North Carolina who have implemented the software, and it's been very vital to them.
Thank you.
So in addition to Urban SDK, which, as I mentioned, we're really excited about and excited to get our hands on that data, there are some other pilot projects and programming costs built into that, about $800,000 that I mentioned on the last slide. Under pilot projects, we're exploring a couple different types of pilot programs that are adopted in our Vision Zero action plan and that we've seen be successful in other Vision Zero communities across the state. One of those that I will shout out is kind of the Creative Crosswalks program. Mount Holly has a similar program that they run where they allow folks to pitch or submit designs. They actually have a toolkit where neighborhoods can actually, pursue designing and then gathering volunteers to do these crosswalks themselves. But the city provides the paint and the materials. but it allows for kind of neighborhood and place-based traffic calming measures that can help get maybe your students and your younger children involved in conversations about traffic safety earlier on. So we have some neat pilot projects built in. And then, of course, the bulk of that chunk of the budget is program administration, so funding staff time, funding events, supplies and materials to support our education and outreach around traffic safety in the community. So any other questions about programs and policies before I keep going? Yeah,
Actually, I'm sorry, if we could back up one, the grant administration, I know we touched on that a moment
Yeah,
ago.
absolutely.
So are we talking about a new position to manage this particular grant, or is that existing staff allocation?
We could, so we are not proposing to repurpose an existing staff position for this. Yeah, so it would either be a new funded position that would be housed at the city permanently, or it would be a 5-year contract with a consulting firm to do that grant administration. And we feel confident that the 4 firms on our pre-qualified transportation consultant list, they all have experience to varying degrees in that type of activity. So we feel confident that we could get some competitive quotes and some support that way if council did not want to add a grant administrator position to staff.
Because I'm assuming that party, whoever's managing that, the way this grant's administered is it's on a project basis, right? So we identify a project, we say that this is where we want grant to be allocated, then you get into the 80-20 split, and so it comes in as we allocate funding for specific projects. It's not like we get this pot of money at one time. It's obviously on a project-by-project basis, right?
Right. I want to wait until I have a little more info from USDOT and FHWA to speak to the specifics of that. But I will, and I'm getting to this kind of later in the presentation. I don't anticipate that we'll be under contract with FHWA for another approximately 11 to 12 months. So we have some time to have these conversations internally once we have more information about how the grant will be administered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Could you give an example of what a pop-up project might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So a pop-up might look like, and it could be, typically you'll see it with temporary materials. So you might see it with plastic bollards or essentially like plastic curb extensions where you want to pilot maybe the idea of a refined design. Take the intersection of R.L. Stowe and Keener as an example. We know that that intersection has some alignment issues. There's almost like a slip turn right lane coming off of R.L. Stowe onto Keener. So that's a location where we've got recommended improvements identified. But say we wanted to kind of test out an alternative before investing in concrete, right, and finalizing that design. We might look to purchase and install temporary materials to basically let folks trial that intended solution, see how folks respond to it, see if it's intuitive for drivers and pedestrians, and see if it's actually having the intended impact on safety, right? If it's actually reducing collisions and potential collisions through that, mitigation of risk. Or if it's, potentially causing unforeseen issues. So that might be one situation where we would use something like that.
Without destroying their car.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. So continuing on, I want to talk a little bit about the capital projects that are going to be funded, and wanted to kind of give an overview by the numbers to start, because I just think this is really worth celebrating and really significant for the city. So among the capital projects, the 4 project packages that we've funded under the grant, we've got 30 intersections and crossings that will be improved across the city. We've more than 15,000 linear feet of safe pedestrian and bike facilities that will be installed. We'll have 2 new traffic signals, 7 new protected mid-block crossings, and new left turn lanes and medians on 3 different corridors across the city. So we're really excited about that. And I do want to mention too, I know that, you've heard this grant package described as safe routes to Belmont schools and campuses, and we do have that focus on safe routes to school infrastructure. But I also want to underscore that the connections and the improvements that this grant is going to make are going to impact far more than just our students and our school families, right? These are going to be providing critical linkages for all of our residents and for folks who visit Belmont. So I want to just make sure that's clear too, that This is the way we message it, and this is how we kind of packaged it to be a federal, a competitive federal application. And school safety is of the utmost importance to our Vision Zero program. And at the same time, we're also restoring connectivity for other members of our community. So with that, want to do a quick highlight. I don't want to take forever on this, and I'm happy to maybe answer questions at the end to save just a little bit of time, but wanted to quickly highlight our 4 project packages. So the first is Safe Routes to Page Primary School, and this is really the project area that kind of got us started with Vision Zero and kicked off our traffic safety planning efforts after a high-profile crash on this corridor involving a 4-year-old child. And so we're really excited that we'll be bringing some much-needed improvements to this area. There will be a new signal at Parkdale and Keener pursued as part of this project package. We'll be filling some sidewalk gaps, and we'll be doing traffic calming on Keener and R.L. Stowe as part of this effort to provide better connectivity kind of across Keener from the east and west sides, those residential areas, and connecting folks on the eastern side of Keener into downtown more safely, and then also providing safer linkages from that area of Belmont into kind of the South Point High School and the more southern areas of the city. That brings us to our next project package, which is Safe Routes to South Point High School and Belmont Middle School. And something that makes this project package really unique is that we were able to have our team at GFT Inc. value the improvements that our Lakeview Farms partners are going to be doing as part of that development as they make improvements to South Point Road. So we were able to count those investments as in-kind contributions towards our local match. So that's a really exciting piece of this project. And again, want to shout out council for seeing the value of those tangible investments and improvements to the system, because those have, again, been able to unlock, you know, several million federal dollars. Yeah.
Sorry, I know you don't want to drill down on this
That's
too
okay.
deeply right now, but
Yeah.
since you mentioned that specific project with improvements along South Point Road in the school district, and the proposed improvements on South Point Road tied to the Lakeview Farms development, and just so you said that those improvements could count towards our portion of the grant, but could that also potentially delay the start of those improvements if that doesn't materialize right away?
So it's a great question, and kind of the quicker answer, and I'm happy to dive into it further, but the quicker answer is only some of the improvements they're making are eligible improvements under the grant. So the widening of the road is not an eligible improvement under
Right.
SS4A, so we
Right.
can't count the value of that. And that, of course, is going to have to happen first before they're installing new crosswalks or upgrading timing of the signals to account for pedestrian crossings. So our understanding of the timing is that by the time they're able to make those improvements that need to lay the foundation for the eligible improvements, we'll be well underway with our grant contract, and we don't anticipate any delays to either project by counting those improvements under SS4A.
So as it relates to the signal, the proposed
Yeah.
signal there at Stowe Road, McKee Farm, and South Point Road, because I almost witnessed a couple of accidents there this evening coming here.
Yeah.
So you're saying that even that signal addition can't occur until the widening is done?
I mean, we'll work directly with that project team on making sure it's not that it couldn't occur until the widening's done. It couldn't occur until we have the grant agreement in place with USDOT.
Sure.
But we anticipate that with some of the other improvements that need to be made prior to Lakeview Farms starting work on their transportation improvements, we're confident that we can work out a timeline with their team that meets our needs for this grant and allows them to move forward smoothly with construction.
So maybe just 2 follow-ups on that. So is it, we have 5 years essentially to have
Once
those projects? Okay, and then
yeah.
secondly, do the projects have to be 100% completed from Lakeview Farms' perspective for it to count? Or can it just be they have started those projects?
My understanding is they have to be complete.
Okay.
The full amount has to be expended.
Yeah, because that's a good point, Jason.
Yeah.
because that's a lot of tied to it. But.
And if they're not completed, could we use part of these funds for that? And then those dollars that were allocated from Lakeview Farms could be obviously used elsewhere.
Yeah, I
right?
think there are some creative solutions we could explore if the timelines are not looking like they'll line up effectively.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I want to highlight also that as part of this project, the Nixon Road multi-use path and turn lanes that were proposed to be funded under the bond project in 2024 were also included here. So those will be covered as part of this project. Next, we have Safe Routes to North Belmont Elementary School, which in that area focuses on safe crossings at the elementary school, which is at the corner of Woodlawn and School Street, but also focuses on the entire Woodlawn corridor. And I want to emphasize, too, that this project package, recognizing that there are higher volumes of freight traffic in that area, includes some specific conflict reduction measures to improve visibility of pedestrians and vehicles as they kind of interact with freight vehicles in that area and help reduce conflicts. And I'm really, really excited about this project and the next one because, you know, something I've been seeing as I've been reading some of the comments on Facebook about this grant and the reactions. You know, are we making improvements in North Belmont? Are we restoring connectivity? And that's something that I haven't just heard related to this grant, but as our transportation planner, I hear often at our community events is, when are we going to see connectivity from North Belmont to downtown? That's something folks have been asking for, and it's something that is really difficult to provide when you have two major east-west corridors, I-85 and 74, in the way. But I am really excited and really proud that the projects in this package and the next one are actually going to allow us to restore that pedestrian connectivity between Woodlawn Street and downtown Belmont. So for me, that I think is the biggest win of this grant package by far. Yeah, Jason.
Sorry, let me keep
That's
jumping in here,
okay.
but you're right, we're getting a lot of attention to this and
Yeah.
how it's going to be allocated. And I know this is not meant to be a terribly deep dive tonight, but
That's okay.
I did notice, and I'm glad to see that we're giving a lot of attention to North Belmont because
Yeah.
we do hear that a lot, and I know that we have some real needs there.
Yeah.
But the allocation in your chart here is showing 2 to 3 times the allocation to North Belmont of most of the other projects, and I'm just
Sure.
wondering, just kind of looking at some of the high-level proposed improvements,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're not adding not proposing to add a traffic signal there. We're not adding sidewalks that I can see. I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of improvements to the crosswalks, but
Mhm.
where is most of that expense coming from?
Absolutely.
High
So
level.
if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm happy to kind of follow up with some of our estimates for each of the projects so y'all can see the breakdown. But if I'm remembering correctly, this was one of the projects that was least advanced in the preliminary engineering when we went into it. And so actually a bigger portion for this project is allocated to the remaining engineering
Design,
costs
yeah.
and the design and kind of preliminary efforts that will be needed to get this project shovel ready compared to the others.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So as you can see, and actually I am going to go back because you can kind of see the full project map here. So the Woodlawn Street project and the North Belmont Elementary School project connects the elementary school to what is currently in the scope of the I-85 widening project at exit 26, which includes construction of the Belmont Rail Trail from that intersection of Woodlawn and currently the alignment of Belmont Mount Holly Road down to Wilkinson Boulevard. So the fourth project finishes that connection to downtown. So we call this project Safe Routes from Downtown to Belmont Abbey College. Again, I want to emphasize, you know, we framed this as Safe Routes to Schools and Campuses in our federal grant application, but this is doing a lot more than just connecting Belmont Abbey students to downtown and vice versa. This is connecting some of our North Belmont residents to downtown again, and allowing folks from downtown to get to some of those destinations between Wilkinson and I-85. So again, a lot of connectivity being provided here. We're also including, so this package also includes some of the improvements to Central Avenue that were proposed under the 2024 transportation bond as well. So there are a couple of those projects that, although the bond didn't get funded, they are getting picked back up through this grant. And a lot of, in addition to the rail trail construction, a lot of either sidewalk repairs or sidewalk gaps being filled. So we're not only looking to connect kind of Central and North Belmont, but we're also, through this project, hoping to provide some better connectivity between East and West Belmont as well. Any questions about the projects before I kind of wrap up, share next steps? I know we've covered several as we've kind of been chatting. Hearing none. All right, so our next steps, as of, I think it was Friday, we got our first outreach from FHWA. It was not our direct point of contact yet, but we were invited to join their welcome and introductory webinar, which is going to take place this Thursday. So myself and several other city staff members are going to attend that webinar on Thursday. We've been advised that there will be another webinar in the next 2 weeks or so that will help us start the conversation around the grant agreement and help us get familiar with what to expect from that process. We'll have an official kickoff meeting and be connected with our designated FHWA rep also in the coming weeks. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we anticipate, and this is based on my conversations with folks who were awarded from SS4A in fiscal year 24, so the last cycle before us, that it may take up to 12 months to get underway. That's also the guidance from USDOT and FHWA, is that it can take about that long. So we're anticipating that we'll have some conversations with you all to really prepare for that as part of our FY27 budget process in the coming months, and then really dive into it as next fiscal year gets started and we have a draft agreement that we can work through with you all. Any questions?
Just further to the match and the different buckets for the match and,
Yeah.
and everything. Is it too early to ask, what the ultimate cash
Cost to the city
cost of the city
will be.
And I, by saying that, I'm sort of loosely referring to as,
Yeah.
inclusion in a capital improvement
Yeah,
project
no,
list
absolutely.
or whatever.
So I can give you a tentative number, but again, I want to make sure that we have our latest information from USDOT and are also able to kind of chat with our funding partners before we lock in on that number. But from the calculations we've done, the max that we would kind of be looking at is around, gosh, and now I'm worried I'm going to misspeak. I think it's around 2.3 million is what we would need to allocate over 5 years through the CIP process in cash flow to be able to support the local match. But that's if certain things don't come through, or if we're not able to use certain portions of the payments in lieu, for example, that we've received to count towards the project. And I will note too, that's based on the current estimation of what the Lakeview Farms improvements will cost based on 2025 dollars. By the time those improvements actually get made, they may be valued a little bit higher based on inflation or whatever those costs come out to. So it's very much still up in the air, but that's the number that we have been looking at so far.
And another point there, so we've talked about that with Jared, Finance Director, about where we plug those numbers in throughout the next 5 years. So with that capital model that we have with First Tryon, we're going to include that as a line item where we can turn an item on, turn it off, and include those numbers throughout the next 5 years.
Yeah. So when y'all look at that, I believe at your retreat for the first time, you'll have some of those numbers.
Yeah, try to plug it in.
Yeah, and Miles, that's a great point. Obviously, let's say it's $2 million. We're not necessarily going to assume that it's $400,000 each of those 5 years, right? There might be upfront engineering costs for those projects that cost, relatively less than the construction, which might hit later. So we'll look at kind of how we anticipate each of those projects to hit timing-wise, and assess it based on that and give kind of our best estimate at this point.
On that same vein, you know, as Lakeview Farms costs will go up, so will ours for these potential projects. Is it possible, you know, relatively soon, particularly maybe at the retreat or a little bit after, to come up with our proposed timeline on when we're going to plan to execute these projects?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be helpful, yeah.
Yeah, I think it
that's
would
a
help
great idea.
visualize it, send it to the community for transparency, but we also may need to work with Jared too for contingency, because if a project is in year 5, we know that that value is going to go up from
Right.
what it's being forecasted this year.
I will note too that all of our estimates for the capital projects include 10 to 15% contingency.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we accounted for that
But I think that
proactively.
timetable would be very,
Yeah.
very helpful.
For sure. Other questions?
Yeah, we know that we'll have to hire an engineering firm to like completely design the projects, and that's the point where we'll really know like the timeline, how we package them. If we talked about this internally as well. If we, you know, put these projects out to bid like as one big package, or whether you break them up separately to include like just the pedestrian crossings into a package, and then high visibility crosswalks into a package, and the rail trail into another package. So we hadn't really got there yet. We just know that we gotta look at it. Yeah,
Right.
I think that
time
makes
frame
sense.
wise.
For sure. And there is some work that we can do even before we're under contract with USDOT to set ourselves up for success there, like bringing project ordinances to all of you before we, or once we've had those conversations, like Miles described, and kind of setting things up on the back end so that we're ready to push forward as soon as that agreement is in place.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank y'all so much.
Thank you for that, Reagan. Any other questions for Reagan on the SS4A grant? All right, well, don't go too far, because
Yeah.
B2, the US DOT fiscal year 26 bill grant opportunity. I think we had asked you to go back and put together some possible opportunities for this grant, and it looks like you've done that, so I'll let you take that away.
For sure. Thank y'all. I'm back again. It's the Reagan show tonight. Hopefully y'all don't get too sick of me. And I only have 9 slides on this one, so hopefully we can move through expeditiously. But yes, so as you remember, we brought forward a memo for your consent agenda at your first meeting in January, talking about the build grant opportunity in fiscal year 2026. Which that opportunity closes on February 24th. So we're really excited, but also need to move quickly on this opportunity. And the project that we proposed in that memo, but that I want to flesh out more and discuss more with you tonight, is the Park Street corridor, NC 273 corridor improvements. And so I wanted to give a little bit more context on why staff proposed that project. I know there was some discussion at the last meeting about some of the other projects that were included in the bond package, for example, and some of the other areas of the community. So we have recently, as you remember, we applied for a build grant last fiscal year in FY25. We were not selected. And we recently in December completed our debrief with USDOT staff about what was compelling about that application and what could have been improved on. And that kind of synced up very nicely, not intentionally, but the timing worked out very well, because that was as they were updating and then releasing the finished version of this year's call for applications. So we were able to kind of take that knowledge from our discussions with USDOT about what makes a competitive build application, and then look at their new call for applications and assess kind of our ongoing projects to understand what might be most competitive in their eyes for this specific grant opportunity. So I want to talk a little bit about the Park Street corridor tonight, and hopefully build some buy-in from you all that that's the right project for this opportunity. Of course, we're open to council direction if you have other projects, but I also want to keep in mind that we have a very limited turnaround time for this grant opportunity. So want to just try our best to answer any questions you might have and see if we can get buy-in to move forward. So with that, Park Street corridor, this project, as we're proposing it, includes basically the extent of Park Street and Belmont city limits. So from the Catawba Street intersection, where Park Street becomes Keener, up to exit 27 and the intersection with I-85. key project elements that we want to highlight are intersection capacity and turn storage improvements at the Park Street and Catawba Street intersection, intersection capacity and congestion and signal timing improvements at the Park Street and Wilkinson Boulevard intersection, pedestrian improvements and conflict reduction measures at intersections north of Park and Wilkinson, especially at Hawley Avenue and Browntown Road, and then multi-use path facilities and ADA compliant improvements across the full corridor. So that's kind of the scope of the project that we're proposing. I want to give a little bit of the project history for different pieces of the proposal. So for the Park and Wilkinson intersection, looking back about 10 years, that intersection was submitted through the state funding prioritization process. And it was selected and it scored highly enough to be funded and be given an official project number, I believe in 2018. We were trying to go back through NCDOT records and MPO records to confirm exactly when, but it was around 2018, which would have been the 5th or 6th cycle of prioritization, that this was funded, included in the State Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP, which is basically NCDOT's list of projects that will be constructed in the next 10 years, or will be funded within the next 10 years. So originally it was funded for right-of-way allocation in 2020, and or acquisition, excuse me, in 2020, and then construction in 2021. As we got closer, that started to be pushed back. And as you remember, in 2020, 2021, we started to see inflation-related cost increases for construction and for a lot of other costs. That began to delay active projects, whether they were actively being constructed or were just funded and slated. So that's when this project started to be pushed back. In the last several years, so within the last 5 years, that project start was pushed back significantly due to cost escalation for this project and many others. And I believe it was around 2023 or 2024 where essentially this project was pushed out to FY29, FY30 for, it says construction timeline on the slide, but my planning director let me know earlier that it was actually just right-of-way acquisition and that construction was not assigned a timeline at that stage. And last year, NCDOT finalized their latest version of the STIP for 2026 to 2035, and this project was defunded as part of that. So there are no funds for right-of-way acquisition or for construction due to cost escalations for this project and others, and the fact that Division 12 only has so much funding to go around for construction. They are only able to fund the highest scoring projects, and this unfortunately was not among that highest tier and ended up falling off along with a couple other projects in the county and the MPO region. So for us, that's a big reason why Park Street is a priority for at least, you know, from a Vision Zero perspective, from a planning perspective. As planning staff, we look back on kind of 2019, 2020, when, for example, the Morris development was approved under the assumption that this would be a funded intersection improvement at the time. So that development was not required to make improvements or mitigations at this intersection. And since that development has been constructed, this intersection has lost funding, but those trips are still hitting our network and hitting that intersection specifically. So for us, that's a concern because we know that this intersection is already at a failing level of service. It can't handle the capacity of vehicles that are already flowing through it. Council made the best decision they could at the time with the information that was available at the time, obviously not foreseeing, as none of us did, a global pandemic. But the reality now is that we have identified needs at this intersection without identified funding. So that's the Park and Wilkinson intersection. On the flip side, throughout kind of the rest of the corridor, I want to bring us back to the transportation bond effort that took place in 2024. So if you remember when that began, our team at Gannett Fleming, or GFT Inc. actually, and several of the folks who are visiting us tonight, helped develop cost estimates and preliminary engineering for 12 projects that were identified by staff as significant needs in the community. That included the Park and Keener and Catawba intersection. It also included pedestrian safety improvements on the Park Street corridor at Wilkinson and Hawley Avenue. It included a range of other projects as well across the city, and council ultimately selected 5 projects to include in that $25 million bond referendum. Council did not include either of the 2 that I just mentioned. As we discussed a moment ago, 3 of the projects that they put forward in the bond are now funded. South Central Avenue improvements are funded through a payment in lieu by the Del Webb project and additional supplementary funds through Safe Streets for All. The Nixon Road multi-use path project is funded through Safe Streets for All, and the South Point Road widening project again is funded through the Lakeview Farms Development committed improvements, as well as again some supplemental funds from Safe Streets for All. We looked at the remaining unfunded projects on that list of 12. And when we looked at those and thought about what we know to make a competitive federal grant application, Park Street stood out as having the most compelling case, the best story that we can tell to argue for a federal award. And that's due to its regional impact and its funding challenges that it presents locally. It's due not just to the regional impact, but to the scale of the funds needed to make the improvements that we know are urgently needed on Park Street, and the fact that we know that scale of funding is not available right now at the kind of local divisional level. So I've included just some graphics of the existing project designs, less so to say this is exactly what will be done if we get this award, but more so to illustrate the fact that Park Street has a level of project readiness that some of our other proposed improvements don't. This one has existing cost estimates and designs at the Park and Keener and Catawba intersection that were updated a little bit more recently through the evaluation of the Crescent project. It also, through the bond, has the proposed pedestrian improvements already fleshed out with a potential cost estimate that can be updated, but it doesn't need to be generated from scratch for the pedestrian improvements north of Park and Wilkinson. And again, this is just an express design. This is the current express design for the Park and Wilkinson intersection that is proposed by Division 12. Again, just highlighting there are existing cost estimates, there are existing designs that our consultant team can work from rather than having to start from scratch and design those. So the fact that we have that information readily available to us for staff is what makes this a very compelling project to consider for that federal application. We anticipate a number of benefits for this project if it were awarded and constructed. This project is really well aligned and highly aligned with our Vision Zero program objectives. And I do want to note that when we brought, this was back in, I think, March of 2025, when we initially discussed our SS4A application with our Vision Zero Advisory Board, we weren't so prescriptive. We kind of said to them, okay, here are all of the potential unfunded projects on our high injury network. What is rising to the surface for you? What do you feel are the most important improvements to be made? And we saw kind of that school and campus theme arise out of several of those improvements and thought we could tell a story from it. But the other most highly recommended and kind of requested locations by that group were these locations, and specifically Park and Wilkinson, Park and Catawba, seeing some improvements being made to that corridor. So we anticipate reductions in crash frequency and severity, given that all of those intersections and corridors are on our Vision Zero high injury network. We also know that failing intersection performance is an issue at several of those intersections, and so we're excited to have the opportunity to seek improvements to that to allow better travel time reliability and less congestion for our residents and commuters who pass through or leave from or come to Belmont to have to deal with. We're looking forward to seeing ADA accessible facilities and those safe pedestrian connections with another reconnection across Wilkinson Boulevard. So again, kind of reconnecting the community in a second location like we're doing with SS4A. We also see opportunities to improve regional mobility and opportunities to leverage some of the investment and commitment and partnership that we've already seen in locations like Wilkinson Boulevard through our partnership with Retail Strategies, our recent adoption of the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan, which talks about the desire to see a more welcoming corridor on Wilkinson and see some appropriate economic development on that corridor, as well as support some of the economic development that our Main Street Board is interested in seeing in the East End on Catawba Street. So I know I've kind of covered, you know, a lot of different reasons why we felt this project was the right one, again, for this grant opportunity. We looked at the alignment with Vision Zero Belmont. We heard from USDOT that that was something that made our Abbey Creek Greenway application last year strong and got us a lot of kind of bonus points and kudos from the reviewer's perspective, is that that also had a very strong linkage to our Vision Zero program and those metrics. We see that alignment with the 2024 transportation bond effort. So while we know these aren't in the top 5 projects that were chosen for the bond package, they were in that top 12 list that was identified as needed improvements in the community. We also know that there's not available local or state funding to make these projects happen in the foreseeable future. And when you combine that with, on this corridor, the urgency of those improvement needs, we think this makes a really compelling case for the federal government to look at and know that they can make a significant impact and get a significant ROI on their funds. And then based on the merit criteria that are included for FY26 and the project readiness for the corridor, we understand that this is going to be more competitive than some of the other projects that have been explored in Belmont in the past. This is very text heavy. I'm not going to read it all to you, but these are the 8 merit criteria under the BUILD grant. In order to have your application move forward even to the second round where they're looking at costs and assessing your cost benefit analysis, you have to score highly on 6 of these 8 categories. And you have to, what we've learned from USDOT is you have to have very specific and data-driven assumptions about why your project meets each of these 8 criteria in order to move forward. So from a staff perspective, as we've assessed, you know, the different opportunities and some of the other projects that have been floated in the last couple years through the bond effort and other projects, this is the one that we feel really strongly about. We could score highly on at least 6 of these merit criteria. So with that kind of covers the project. Before we dive into discussion about the project and any questions there, I did just want to cover briefly the budget amendment that y'all are being asked to approve. Obviously, if you don't agree with the project that's being proposed, the contract kind of goes with it, so we wouldn't need to consider that. But from a staff perspective on developing the application, just wanted to underscore the importance of that. So in order to have a compelling application, there is some additional engineering and cost estimation that needs to be done to support a competitive and realistic benefit cost analysis that will stand up to scrutiny by USDOT. I apologize, that first bullet point under engineering is not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be further down. But we are really at first hoping to engage a consultant to help us understand, okay, can we fit everything we've proposed in that $25 million cap? And if not, what needs to change, or what do we potentially need to take out to go for that full $25 million and get the most bang for our buck? We also are, like I said, looking for consultant support to complete the benefit cost analysis, which is about half of the application. Last year when we did our FY25 build grant application for Abbey Creek Greenway, we also got consultant support for this part because we just don't have the staff expertise for that type of work in-house. And that contract was at about $45,000. So the contract before you tonight is, I think, just under $77,000, and that also includes all of the development of the grant narrative and the merit criteria justification to help us get to the point where USDOT will review our benefit cost analysis. last year. Staff did that, and by staff I mean mostly me. And that is a significant investment of time on behalf of the city, and especially with our recent SS4A award and with the work that that entails, we just don't have the staff capacity in-house at this point to put that much time over the next several weeks into this application. So that's why we're looking for an expanded grant support contract this time to help us meet that February deadline. So with all that,
Lot
I'm
of
happy to
information.
answer any questions.
I do have a question. So
Yeah.
what is our estimation though? Because I agree on the project. I think, council at the time decided not to put this on the bond because of other discussions that were happening at that time, right? So I think this was also identified as one of our most dangerous, if not the most dangerous intersection in Belmont. But
That's right.
what is our estimation for fully loaded costs? I know we want the technical details to see with the cap, the hard cap of 25 million, but what are we
What are we
kind of thinking?
expecting? Yeah. It's a great question, and because we don't have all of the improvements fleshed out yet, I'm not sure. I think we will hit that 25 million.
Okay.
And we
It-
may even be slightly over.
Okay.
I want to say that, so obviously we discussed the Catawba and Park Street intersection through the Crescent project, but also through the bond. Under Crescent, that was valued at, I think, closer to 10 million, but that also included some other off-site improvements and some improvements that were specific to if that project was developed. So I think that the original Gannett Fleming estimate, which I think was like 6.7, is a little more accurate for what we'd be looking to include here. And then the Park and Wilkinson intersection, those are going to be the two big money sucks, if
Yep.
you will. That one has been estimated, depending on the design, at anywhere from 12 to 18 million on its own.
Just the Wilkinson and Park?
Just the Park and Wilkinson.
I can see that. Yeah, that's a lot.
So that one's a lot on its own. So
Which is fine. I guess
Yeah.
maybe this kind of helps clarify where my questioning's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to last time, I just want to make sure we're taking full opportunity
yeah,
of the entire grant if possible. because,
Absolutely.
Again, we just were awarded the total amount for the last one.
yeah.
So, I mean, if the project takes up the total amount, or we think it will, I mean, I have no objection.
I think it definitely will. I think for this one at least, the question will be more so, there are cases where projects have been awarded a little more than the full amount. Would we want to submit slightly more than that
Yeah.
$25 million
Why not? What
cap
do you got to lose?
to get everything, or would we want to fit what we can into 25?
No, I say go above it, because then it shows the need, the
Yeah.
realistic need of why we need this amount of money, right?
Right.
This is an expensive project. So.
Yeah. Well, and just as a reminder too, and I know, I think y'all are familiar with this, but the difference between this opportunity and SS4A is for us, because we're in a rural designated area, there is no local match requirement. So we're able to go for that full 25 without having to come up with 5 million or any other support. And actually, this is a bit of a sidebar, but we heard from our USDOT rep who we debriefed with. We asked, does it help to give a match even if it's not required? And they said no. So that's something that we've heard conflicting guidance on from some of our partners in the region and the state. Confirmed from USDOT, if you're not required to give a match, you don't need to actually do it to raise your application to the top of the pile. They're looking just at the merit criteria and that sort of thing.
And these two grants, even though they're both federal grants, they're
Yeah.
both entirely independent. Let's
They're
say you were-
entirely independent.
The fact that you're awarded a recipient of a SS4A grant
Right.
doesn't really impact your chances for.
Not necessarily. It may help our chances because we can demonstrate that another wing of USDOT has reviewed our application and our team and said, hey, you're competent, you're able to handle this amount of investment from us, and we trust you with it. So I think having, we won't be at a place before we submit this where we've delivered on SS4A yet, but I think just showing that we've been able to receive that and been one of, I think, 70 recipients in the nation for that award makes a compelling case to, invest in our community further.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, but it also shows that we absolutely need it. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about our statistics being higher than our region within Charlotte, right?
Right.
I mean, this is something, where you get to the emotional aspect to where, this can save lives and is consequential for our area, so.
Yeah, well, anybody commuting in Gaston County is going through that.
It's regional, it has a regional approach
Exactly.
to it for sure.
Exactly.
Reagan, I want to commend you and your planning team.
Yeah.
I know it's very early on in this
you.
process, and you've got an accelerated time frame to work on now with this.
Yeah.
But you know, the justification that you provided tonight for identifying these projects, I think, was very helpful for me, at least,
Thank
and I'm
you.
sure it was for my colleagues. So thanks for your time.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
So just to confirm, it's generally 25 million, because I
I'm
can't seem to
confident,
locate that
yeah.
anywhere in writing.
No. And that's because
That's why I asked.
well, the
It'll suck
key
up
here
25 million
too-
overnight.
the key to remember is, so the cost estimates we do have are based in like 2024 dollars. So construction costs have gone up since then. And we're actually still working with Division 12 to try to get access to their estimates for their latest designs for Park and Wilkinson. So we're working on, you know, getting all of the latest numbers so that then our proposed consultant team can update them and make them all apples to apples.
So that's, as we might say in the sports world, it's a soft cap.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Absolutely. But I think the mission is clear, and staff will do what we can to make sure we capitalize on the full opportunity of 25 million, if not more, if that's what it takes to make those improvements.
Right. Taylor, do you have something specific to this?
I just wanted to say first, this infrastructure dollars, these infrastructure dollars.
Can you want to come up so we can?
Hi. Thank you so much for considering the support and blessing behind these grants. These are really once in a lifetime funding opportunities because it's not typical for the federal government to have these monies provided to local government. The infrastructure funding is time limited, and that's why this deadline is so important. And we're really lucky to have such great grantsmanship on staff. So I just wanted to also give kudos to Reagan and Tiffany and Miles who hired her, because I'm really just delighted because a lot of municipals our size have to contract for that level of support. Park Street is one of the most dangerous corridors in our town. That's what we sat with the Vision Zero data, and we were like, oh, but the schools are important, but Park Street is important, and they're both important. And so I'm really, really excited that this is in the works. The last thing that I'll recommend is just the emphasis on economic impact has never been greater. And so something that I would just want to reflect on is like, what could investors do along that corridor if there's investment in the infrastructure? You see oftentimes in cities that whenever you, flip or renovate, urban revitalization, it brings in businesses to be able to develop, and that investment in the infrastructure precedes whether or not we might flip the shopping center right there, or have some kind of travel center that goes beyond a gas station, and that actually creates more incentives for money to flow from the interstate right in a pit stop right in Belmont. So if that's something that can be demonstrated or argued in the grant proposal, it would make us even more competitive.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
On a semi-related note, that probably is pertinent to Wilkinson and our efforts there as well. Yeah. As we,
With retail strategies.
yes, yes.
1000%. And I think the fact that council has already invested in doing the research and doing the planning to assess, what do we want on Wilkinson Boulevard? What do we want that to look like? That's another thing that makes this corridor in particular very compelling at a federal level, because we can say we've done the pre-work to understand what we want to see, and now we just need these funds to help us unlock that potential.
Definitely.
Why don't they announce the awards for this?
For this one, so they follow a bit of a stricter timeline, so they're estimating right now that they will announce this at the end of June 2026.
Fairly
So we would
quick.
hear a
Yeah, it's
little
quick
sooner.
turnaround.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah,
real quick.
yeah. Now last year, I think it was closer to August, but they they said end of June, so it might, sometime over the summer.
Well,
is what
whenever
we
they
can
want to send the check.
That's right.
Yeah, precisely.
Let's not get ahead of it.
Right.
Gotta
right.
win it first.
Knock on wood.
Thank you, Reagan. Any other discussion before we move on to consideration of the next? No? All right. Well,
I mean,
Awesome.
I'm assuming everyone agrees this is the best project to move forward with, so.
Okay.
well, then we'll move to amended B3, and I will entertain Any
It's me
motion?
again. Just wanted to share this.
Oh, go ahead.
too. And as you're voting on this, so 76,386 is the total contract amount. Wanted to let y'all know staff were able to negotiate that down from the original proposal, which was about $3,500 more. So we're trying to do what we can to make sure we're spending city dollars as efficiently as possible. We're also not asking for you to amend the budget in that full amount. City Council approved Planning Department grant support funds in this year's budget to the tune of $24,000, so we're using those. We're also proposing to use the remainder of the fiscal year mayoral salary budget that has been dedicated to grant writing purposes. So total budget amendment amount is $49,430. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you, Megan.
Reagan show is over.
Then I would make a motion to approve the budget amendment and authorize the city manager to execute an agreement for grant support and technical assistance related to this grant application and with, I believe, Kittleson and Associates is the transportation consultant who we are proposed to contract with. Is that correct?
Second.
All right, motion made by Jim, seconded by Alex. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, Reagan, for that, and thank you
Great
everyone
work,
again for your
Reagan.
effort.
Yeah.
Yes. thank
The,
you.
as Jason said, the expedited process was, you guys were on it, and you brought a very comprehensive package forward. And I feel really, really good about our chances on that. So thank you again. All right, that takes us to agenda item B4, the 2026 Red, White, and Belmont event date discussion. I believe Cassidy is here for the city.
Good evening.
Hello.
I promise I will be incredibly brief with this.
Oh, speak up a little bit.
Up, louder.
I can barely hear you.
You can
so-
yell. It's all right.
I promise I'll be quite brief. We
Are
have
you
been having
timing
some.
yourself?
I'm sorry.
3 minutes, go.
Oh no,
3
I
minutes, yeah.
shifted it. I'm sorry.
Go ahead and
Look-
flip that, actually.
We have been having some internal staff discussions about this year's annual Red, White, and Belmont celebration. And I was asked to sort of combine all this information, bring it to you guys. The primary consideration that we wanted to let you guys have, since this is the America 250 celebration, to see if the date makes any difference as far as scheduling goes. So just a couple of considerations to think about. Friday, July 3rd, we do typically hold Friday Night Live concerts, as you would think, on a Friday. Other than the past year or two, that's pretty well aligned with the calendar. This year it moves to a Saturday. And I'll get to the staff discussions on a later slide, but generally speaking, being a holiday weekend, the various departments that are involved have noted that having a full weekend, albeit not a 3-day, would probably help boost department morale. Although there is no cost difference in staff pay between the 2 dates. On the July 4th consideration side, it is the America 250 holiday in 2026. Belmont has been requested to have a presence in the Dallas Parade in some form. I assume that would probably fall to you all for your participation there. And then in looking at all of the other events going on in the county, we do have 3 other events that are happening on July 4th this year. So just a quick look at those. Mount Holly goes the earliest with June 25th. Then we've got Cramerton and Cherryville both beating out July 3rd or the 4th. And then we've got confirmation from Gastonia, Dallas, and Kings Mountain. They will all be hosting their fireworks celebration, Independence Day type things on the 4th itself. So from the 4 departments that are typically involved in putting on this event, each one independently has recommended scheduling for Friday, July the 3rd. So I just wanted to open the floor to questions, comments, see if we could get a wave of the wand from you all with a final date selection.
Yeah, thoughts? Any specific burning desire to have it? Well, I will say that in the Main Street meeting that I sat in on that, it was overwhelmingly requested that it be on the 3rd. And that was for a number of reasons, that mostly of what you pointed out.
And traditionally, it's pretty hard to source volunteers on the holiday itself,
Yeah,
which is a
and we're so-
consideration of the board.
Yeah, we're so heavily volunteer-driven for those events. I also think, personally, what am I going to be doing? I'm going to probably be doing something with my family or something. So, not that it wouldn't be in downtown, it probably would. But I think a lot of other people are going to be balancing that as well. Whether, of course, they want to come see the fireworks, we always have an amazing turnout for that. But then, are we competing? This is kind of a big one. Are we competing with that, or does it make a huge difference?
I mean, and the fireworks are free this year too, right?
I
hope they
I
will.
hope we're not using
Or a
that.
discount at least. Yeah.
Well, that's true. If we do it on the 3rd and they don't work, we can still do it on the 4th.
We hope that.
Redo.
The redo.
I mean,
2026.
my preference, I think it's fine. I mean, if staff recommends it to be the 3rd,
Yeah.
let it be that way, right? I agree with Mayor Jordan on competing with other communities. It is a big one. It's the 250, but we can build up to that too. I mean,
At least it's not on the 25th or whatever Mount Holly's doing.
It's early.
yeah.
That doesn't seem very
June
patriotic.
25th, yeah, they're kicking it off early.
So there's nobody else doing anything on the 3rd, right?
Not within the county. And we have a compilation that came from the GBA as well as some individual reach outs. So we think we've touched on all the municipalities and gotten responses from them.
What date did we do it?
It was on the 4th last year.
Well, what day was the 4th? Was it, the 4th might have been a Friday.
It was a Friday.
Was it Friday?
I don't remember.
Looks like Parks is going to a calendar right now.
Cassidy, while he's
I mean, not-
looking that up, the last Friday Night Live, that's typically in June.
It's a
right?
Friday.
It was a Friday?
Yes, it's happened to fall
The
on
last
Friday.
Friday Night Live is typically
This one, the Red, White, and
in the
Belmont.
Red, White, and
I think we've always kind of done.
We like
this
to
on
go out with a
Friday,
bang.
haven't we?
We did it on July 4th.
There have
on
been a
Thursday,
year or
2 years ago.
two in the past couple of years that it's fallen where the 4th was on maybe a Saturday and we just or a Thursday, and we nabbed it just to be on the 4th. But
I've seen it, in my experience, it's been both. I've seen it on the 4th, and I've seen it not on the 4th, depending on what day of the week the 4th falls on.
Let's just do it Friday the 3rd.
I'll make a motion that we hold the 2026 Red, White, and Belmont event on Friday, July the 3rd.
Second.
All right, motion made by Jason, seconded by Alex. All in favor? Any opposed? On July 3rd it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy. All right, moving along. Let's see, put my glasses on here. B5, lobbyist status update. I think it's going to be.
Thank you, Mayor,
Miles
members
here.
of council. During the 2024 retreat, there was an item on that retreat agenda regarding a lobbyist. And you all directed staff to move forward with vetting lobbyists provided by Representative Loftus. At that point, we contracted with Hager Strategic Solutions, and Mike Hager became our lobbyist at that time. Mike informed me, and he apologized for not being here today. He's got the flu. But he stated that he plans to run for his old seat, the North Carolina House District 113 representative, and therefore he had to resign his position as a lobbyist. And so I wanted to have a discussion with you all whether we wanted to engage another lobbyist, if you all think it's beneficial, and if so, the process that y'all would like to use to hire the next lobbyist. And so,
Well, first of all, good. We've got a good relationship with him, so hopefully he wins. But
yeah.
what is your perspective? Do you think it's been beneficial from your experience?
I think it has, especially for Mike. He knew Raleigh. He could navigate Raleigh. He knew the
Everyone
indoors,
knew
the
him.
outdoors.
Everybody-
everybody-
Everyone did know him.
He got us to the front of the line on a lot of that.
For sure.
stuff.
At lunch,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he allowed you all to stay here and let the representatives come here and meet. You know, he coordinated all that. Plus, we took trips up to Raleigh and did that. So he knows he knew the state budget process.
Doesn't his daughter do it?
But
Yeah, his daughter is a member of Strategic Solutions, Hager Strategic Solutions, but she's a
Mount Holly.
lobbyist with, she lobbies for City of Mount Holly and I think a couple other agencies. And so, yeah, I do think it's a benefit. He allowed us to, narrow our budget request list that goes to the state, so he helped us out with that. He drafted that for us. He was up there, as they were meeting, he was there with them and had an opportunity to go into their office and sit down and, lobby for our needs. And so I think it's a benefit. The contract amount for Mike was $2,500 a month. Of course, that money is budgeted for this full fiscal year. He's not our lobbyist now, so we could pick up someone else, given that we still have the budget in this fiscal year, depending on whatever that contract may be. So it's up to you all. I mean, the Secretary of State has on their website like a full list of all the lobbying firms there.
Do you have somebody in mind?
Well, since this worked out so well, the whole origin of this was us reaching out to Donnie. Why don't we just reach back out to Donnie and get a short
or you
list
could
from
ask
him?
Brad.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
just Donnie,
Yeah.
but reach out to our local representatives and have them send us a short
Yeah,
list.
much like we did last time, and because I mean that's like you said,
That's how we
they're our
landed Mike,
liaison to
yeah.
our legislators, so get their feedback on who they might recommend. But I think it's definitely been a benefit to us in many respects.
Is Mike allowed to recommend someone or offer a suggestion for that?
I don't know about Mike, if he's allowed to do that or not. I don't know. I could ask him. His opinion
Why
on
wouldn't
that.
he be?
Well, there's a lot of rules regarding lobbyists.
I don't know if there's
complicated.
Yeah, kind of complicated.
Complicated,
So I could do that. I could reach out to Representative Loftus and to have a short list. Is that what y'all want me to do? And then
Yeah, maybe send it to Donnie, Brad, and
John,
John.
Okay. And then at that point, do you all want to narrow down the short list firms, or do you want me to do that and make a recommendation? Y'all want to
I'm
interview
comfortable with you.
folks, or
I'm comfortable.
I'm comfortable with you narrowing it down and making a
I
recommendation.
think that's what we did last time, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I did like that Mike was familiar with our locality.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody that's never really been to Belmont, has no idea what we're doing here.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I would think somebody who's currently lobbying or has lobbied for local government would be beneficial.
For this area,
deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he did us in Hickory, wasn't it?
Mike.
Yeah.
He started out with us, but then during Hurricane Helene, he lives up in that area, Lake Lure. So he started lobbying for Lake Lure.
Lake Lure.
But he in his contract, he's the only, Belmont's the only municipality that he could lobby for here in Gaston County. And that was listed, he checked with me and Parks before he lobbied for Lake Lure, and we looked at the contract and said, yeah, that would be appropriate.
I'm not sure how long that process might take for you to come back with a recommendation, or when the legislature goes back into session on their budget deliberations. I know they're not, the ones I've spoken to lately aren't real optimistic that we're going to even have a budget this year.
Yeah.
They're going nowhere fast.
But to keep our list of projects in front of them that's already, in their hands, maybe as we talked about, this might be a good opportunity for whoever we identify, and if we end up contracting with them, that's kind of their first order of business, is to say, hey, yeah, Belmont, these are still Belmont's needs. We do want to keep this in front of you guys as you're deliberating over the budget. And we'll keep our fingers crossed.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Miles, does that give you all the direction you need from us?
It does. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, well, we do have a closed session agenda item here, so I will entertain a motion to move into closed session for 2 reasons. We're going to be going into closed session specifically in accordance with NC Gen Stat 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location and expansion of industries and other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreements on tentative lists of economic developments, incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations, or to discuss matters related to military installation closures or realignments. And as well, with that, NC Gen Stat 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney, the legal counsel employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, and this is regarding specifically an update on the lawsuit ASF TAP NC2 LLC versus the City of Belmont. Invited into this closed session, specifically by name,